So this passage comes towards the end of the text, and this is the moment where Simon is killed, and he is coming out of the forest to tell them about the parachuted man who he's found. The group is all practicing their ritual dance, and he stumbles upon them. They mistake him for the beast, and they begin to kill him. This passage exemplifies the transition from civilized to savage by describing the group as a living organism. The first place where this living organism is evident is at the beginning of the passage when it's stated that they began to beat like a steady pulse. The word pulse here is really important because it has a connotation of being associated with a heartbeat. And so this group is given this heartbeat, and it's as if they're coming to life, or as if this is a birth of this new sort of organism. The word steady is really important here as well because it modifies the pulse as one that is happening frequently over time as opposed to being erratic. And so there's a connotation here that the pulse is something that's going to be continual over time. The second place where this idea of the organism appears is a little bit further in the passage when it's stated that they throbbed and stamped as a single organism. And again, we've got that repetition of this concept of a single organism. The fact that they're unified as well really demonstrates this concept of this living thing that has started. The verbs throb and stamp as well are really important here. The throbbing again has that direct connection to the idea of the pulsing heart. The stamping is a little bit more violent, but it has this connotation of this sort of organism that is willing to fight or willing to sort of proceed in terms of its survival. The third place where this concept of the living organism is evident is in the creation of a voice. There's the repetition of a chant that the group says 4 times in this passage. And the chant is, kill the beast, cut his throat, spill his blood. And the fact that this chant is repeated several times really shows that this organism has this unified voice that they've taken on. It's in some ways created its own voice. At the end, in the 4th repetition, the voice also adds on, do him in. So it also kind of morphs and evolves and takes on its own independent voice. The verbs that are used in this chant are very simple verbs and in some ways very rudimentary, as if the organism is starting off in a sort of very simple way. It's killing, it's cutting, and it's spilling, and then ultimately it's doing. And so all of those verbs are sort of very simple, but they're also very violent as well. And so it adds this concept of savagery as opposed to being civilized. The 4th place where this concept is apparent is a little bit further in the passage when it's stating that the sort of organism fell and the mouth of the new circle crunched and screamed. What's important about this passage is the group is in a literal circle as they're chanting and practicing their sort of fake dance. When Simon comes in, they open the circle up, and so there's an opening in the larger circle. And in some ways, it's very symbolic of this concept of a mouth. Simon enters into the circle as if he's a piece of food or something that will be consumed. And so he enters into this sort of symbolic mouth of this circle and proceeds to be eaten or killed by the entire group. As well in this portion, it's important to think about this concept of a mouth. Not only does the mouth have a voice and is chanting, but the mouth is also eating, right? Or in this case, killing and then destroying Simon. And so that mouth takes on that symbolic larger meaning of moving from sort of civilized to more savage. The last place where this concept of the living organism appears is towards the end of the passage when it states that there were no words and no movements but the tearing of teeth and claws. And so this is clearly demonstrating that transition from civilized to savage and sort of the ultimate transformation here. The fact that there are no words anymore really brings back this idea that they had this language and this voice was created, but by the end, when they're completely savage, language has gone away. And so the concept that language is representational of civilization is highlighted in the fact that the language goes away, therefore their civilization goes away as well, and they're completely savage after they have killed Simon. So the passage really exemplifies this transition from civilized to savage by describing the group as a living organism. This is visible in the pulse-like beat at the beginning of the passage. It's seen in the single organism that is throbbing and stamping. It's also seen in that repetition of that larger group voice. And it's also seen in the larger symbol of the mouth that is symbolically eating or killing Simon. And then finally, it's seen at the end of the passage when there are no words and they've completely lost that element of civilization and they are completely savage by the end of the passage.